And we're live. Josh,
Let's
before we
just
get
try.
too far off the topic, you were talking about depression and marijuana together for a while. So let me lay this out there. My recipe for fixing depression is this. Outdoor activity, personal relationships with friends and family, and sense of accomplishment, right? Those are the things that I think cure depression, right? Is it that
For sure.
pot like sort of causes depression, or pot encourages behavior that doesn't have those ingredients?
So I'm never gonna be one like I'm gonna say, and like if I even say the kind of things that I say, my community so heavily, almost like there's been a lot of times that I've been just like speaking very objective truths lately, and like the community's like pushing me away and like hating me for it.
They don't want to hear the
When
truth.
like because it's like it's a personal experience. Like I'm speaking from personal experience, not trying to like specifically change the way other people use the plant, but like relating to that, like weed does not cause depression, but it itself is something that like it like pushes the problems away. Like it makes you very okay with doing nothing. It makes you very okay with like whatever you're doing. And a lot of people like will smoke because they're bored, or they'll smoke because, you know, they're like just wanting to enjoy like a video game or something. And all of a sudden 9 hours have passed and they haven't like dealt with anything, and haven't like, you know, dealt with especially like their problems. So their problems just pile up, pile up, pile up,
and then
pile
they
up.
feel bad about it and guilty,
Yeah,
and then
just
to
like,
get rid of
oh,
that, they either smoke
they smoke
or
more. And like there's so many just like objective realities about the plant that people don't want to accept, because they assume that like we're still they assume we're basically still in a prohibition phase, which we are, but they assume we're not at a place where most people agree with the fact that it's okay to smoke weed. Like most people are like, weed's okay. So now we have to go to, how can we smoke this responsibly and not fuck yourself up? Because it's definitely possible to smoke this and fuck yourself up. Like the 16-year-old like kid who sits in his basement and smokes pot all day is not just a stereotype, it's also reality. And like if we're not going into this like looking at objective truths, like, hey, you actually can wake up with a weed hangover. It might not be as bad as like an alcohol hangover, but the reason most people wake and bake is literally to start to get rid of the effects, the groggy effects, all the effects they were feeling, and get on that good plane to start their day.
You can get a weed hangover? I'd never heard that.
Especially with edibles. You mostly see it when people take large doses of edibles. Honestly, most of the time, if people are just hitting a bong, it's probably not going to give you any kind of a hangover. But there's definitely, if you're saturating your endocannabinoid system with so many cannabinoids, like a really high dose edible, or gram dabs, like huge dabs and stuff, you're going to wake up feeling groggy. You're going to wake up feeling slightly anxious. Like they're not on the effects that an alcohol hangover is, but there's definitely still something there. And we basically only put cannabis on planes of other drugs when we're like glorifying our plant. So like the only time we'll compare it to alcohol or opiates or whatever is when we're like, but weed's better. And like we're downplaying all these other substances and trying to like put our plant on a pedestal without just accepting very base realities that help us consume easier. Like I don't want to tell anyone how not to smoke weed, but I would rather try to like lay out my truths and like what I experience with it and my consumption, to try to like make sure that anyone can guide themselves away from that. Because not really many people talk about the negative effects of weed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
people
anytime you bring
almost
it up, you're
deny
right.
that there's any like need to be responsible weed smoker, right? Like
That's my exact biggest point, is like there is responsible limits, and like it's almost like when you're so high all the time, you're in a detached state that you don't realize how high you are all the time. And like, yes, it's okay from a health level, I guess, and from like a life level, if you don't want to do anything with your life, just like smoke weed all the time. But like you're not going to be taking advantage of all your time. You're probably going to be wasting some of your time. And like this is not to detract from the medical use of weed, because obviously there's people that mentally and physically have to use the plant every day. But even that, a lot of medical users take the liberty to excessively use the plant because they have a medical card or they medically can. It's like, yeah, if someone's prescribed like a medication, they don't go and abuse it because they can. Like they take a small amount that's going to help them get over whatever they're trying to combat.
You're totally
So-
right, but I just was thinking how funny it is that like at least quite a few people tuned into this episode like PKA 420. I'm gonna get high as fuck, and now, and now
I didn't even think
the,
of
the
that.
pot man is like, well,
Pot man's
you
like,
might want to reevaluate that.
it's very true.
But yeah, it's like it's the same
weed's great.
feedback loop. Like, and you and Woody are 1,000,000% right that anytime I've never had to confront a friend on weed or anything, but anytime you ever say anything like, not even confronting them, anything negative about it, like, oh, this other
Right.
guy smokes all day and like he does nothing, like he still
He's
lives in his
offensive.
parents' basement and does just this, that, and the other thing. And instead of being like, yeah, that sucks, he really needs to get control, it'll be like, well, at least he's not a heroin addict. At
Yeah.
least he's
Right.
not a crackhead. At least he's not an
Right.
alcoholic who wakes up at 3 a.m. to drink a
Right.
bottle of Smirnoff or
The other one
whatever.
you get
Hey.
is, hey, he would be that same guy whether he smoked weed or not. I hear that all the time. Look at how productive Joe Rogan is, and he smokes weed.
it's and that right there is like the point itself is true. Like they have a valid point, and that's a very valid truth.
Mhm.
But at the same time, weed is not helping them get any closer to making them a more productive person. And like no matter I only smoke sativas, I only smoke, it's like no matter what you're smoking, especially if you're only living high all the time, like that detached state, whether you want to accept it or not, like you're living and thinking through a different lens, and like you're not thinking through a sober lens.
What is
So it's
the
not helping you build your
sativa
life.
and igloo
Oh, it's
or something?
indica.
Indica. So there's indicas are supposed to make you sleep. Actually, this could be something I go on a huge rant about, but I'm not going to. So they're terms
got
that
time.
we currently give to the different effects of weed. In my opinion, we should just call it sedative and stimulant, as we do with all other medicines.
Mhm.
But indicas are the sedative and sativas are the stimulant.
But
So
you find sativas are not a get up and get it. They're not Adderall, huh?
so it's weird. For someone who has ADD, sativa work very similar to Adderall.
Okay.
But for your average person, like it will give them a slight euphoric effect with maybe some kind of a motivational creative boost. I can't actually say weed gives you any kind of a motivational boost. I think motivation wise, weed keeps you pretty on the same level, if not detracts.
Yeah, probably saps it away, I would think.
Because
Or
there's
that's the
just
stereotype.
there's no, I would say there's just no drive to create a lot of the time unless you like the creative aspects of weed when you become a daily long-term user start to slowly go like get less and less and less and less unless you check your use and you try to control your tolerance and stuff. So like you can smoke weed for 10 years and get great creative use out of it, but you're probably not someone who's sitting there smoking like 4 grams of oil a day because your body's so saturated with like cannabinoids that you're basically just maintaining at that point.
We watched
And,
a
like-
video, Woody, and Taylor, in our we do like a hangout with our patrons, like once a month, and we all hang out for like 4 hours,
Right.
like down below, and we watched a video of someone.
Was it
doing-
Josh?
No,
It wasn't?
No,
I
it
was-
wasn't Josh.
no,
For the
absolutely
last
not.
hour, I've been like, was that dude Josh?
no, because Josh is alive. This guy did a dab that was like, I want to say it was
Is it Mountain Man?
nearly an ounce. It was either
Yeah.
it was either
Like 26
it was,
grams?
yeah, there you go. Yeah, a 26 gram dab. There were like
remember this one.
two. They weren't even nails. They were like glass vessels that they were, and they had like two guys like blow torching.
It was a
them to
3-man
Right.
job to get high.
Right.
and he's just he's not inhaling any like pure oxygen. It's just it's just like he's on the rig and then he exhales and then he just stays on the rig for what feels like 2 or 3 minutes.
Forever, right?
We didn't finish the video. We don't
Yeah.
know what happened at the end.
No,
like
I think we finished it, and I had questions about whether he did it all because it seemed like there was some
So-
left, and you guys explained that the very bottom of it is not good. Or
Yeah, I mean, realistically, at that rate, no matter how, like, there's so many problems with it because I've actually met the guy. He's a mountain, really, really, really nice guy. He's probably just super ridiculously high all the time. Now, to come to think of it, but what they basically did, and I think actually all of that stuff they call it reclaim, and they took all the reclaim and put it into capsules, and then donated all the reclaim to a patient with cancer. So that was like the nice thing of the challenge. But he I remember one of the times because he does challenges like that all the time, like 20 grams, 16 grams, 18.
Hey, this is the see how much of this cancer patient weed I can smoke challenge.
Well, forgiving myself. Right. Accurate though. And like he always talks about his lungs being just like saturated and feeling heavy for weeks. Like when he's breathing, he like feels the oil like in his lungs.
Not good.
But you're wasting most of that because the alveoli in your lungs don't allow you to inhale past like a certain amount. So even when I'm doing like the gram dabs, which was like the biggest ones that I've done, you basically are inhaling like 0.4 and the rest of it's just like either going up in smoke or just kind of being
How
exhaled.
much is a gram dab? Like, because that's the one you always see online of like the challenge amount. Like if someone doesn't smoke weed and they do the gram dab challenge, are they just going to be asleep in like 2 seconds?
This is one of the reasons that I'm almost glad that my old channel doesn't have, it's deleted and gone. Like some of the stuff I was perpetuating was ridiculous. It was entertaining for sure, and it's definitely what I built a career on. So I have to walk a fine line of still like keeping a weed career and not being like outcast, being realistic about cannabis use. But yes, like it would fuck someone up if they took a gram dab because like milligram amount wise, if we have like a 79% oil, which is like pretty standard, that's 790 milligrams of THC in that gram. So them taking a gram dab, like that's so much THC that it would just like flood their brain. They'd puke, they'd green out, they'd pass out. Like they'd cough to the point that they would probably feel like they were dying and have an anxiety attack. Like there's a lot of things regarding that are awful because your average dose for a new consumer is 10 milligrams of THC. And even that might be too high. Like some of them go to like 2.
I can speak to the making you feel complacent because when Kyle and I and Chiz were in Colorado a couple years ago smoking, I was fine, and so were Kyle and Chiz sitting at the same table ordering all 3 meals Grubhub, playing Magic the Gathering for like 11 hours straight. And at no point was I like, you should go see beautiful Colorado.
Pretty much. That was on
We've got windows.
Right, we can see outside.
Open the door. It's getting foggy in here.
I did that on a larger scale with my life and Uber, I feel like, for like 5 or 6 months. So yeah, it's definitely something that like you just, in order to be able to avoid the negative effects, you have to be aware of them. And like I started my channel because I didn't know anything about weed and like I was super sick and tired of just like scrolling through forums of people arguing. So I was like, fuck it, like I'll take this to YouTube and see if I can like learn from that community. And there really wasn't a community when I like started making content in like 2011-ish. But like I feel like it's grown to a point now where just like people are just perpetuating the same stoner anecdotes that we've been living in for far too long, and it's not worth continuing that.